Hi, this is Mike Lee from the band Grin Cynic, and you're watching Concerts That Made Us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Mike, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Excellent. Glad to be here.
I'm delighted to have you now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music over the next bit. So I suppose we better start at the beginning. You formed Grin Cynic back in the late 90s. You released your debut album. You got some success with it, but then you disbanded. Kind of walk us through that period in the band's history.
Sure. Yeah, back in the mid to late 90s, I was writing some music and submitted it to a local independent record label, and they uh, really liked what they heard. And they said, well, where could we come see you play? I said, well, I don't have a band. I actually just, recorded that in in my living room. He's like, well, we really like it. Can you put a band together? And we'd like to get you in the studio and record an album and get you guys on the map. Like, oh yeah, this is great. Would love to do that. So I did. I found a lead singer, and together him and I kind of put Grin Cynic together in Orlando. We got into the studio, recorded an album in like a week. It was one of those quick ones. And then we headed out on tour and started to play shows and, really gaining traction pretty fast with the label behind us. We were able to get onto the Howard Stern radio show and have an interview there. And Howard actually played our single for the audience, during like a prime time drive on a Monday morning, which was great. So millions of people heard it. A bunch of other people heard it. We did some showcasing. We did some cool gigs up in New York, and then they put us on television on the E channel and did this whole thing. And it was a really fun experience. We got picked up for distribution back in the day by Blockbuster Music. I don't know if you remember them. Um, and so our CD was distributed there. But yeah, our management really didn't follow up on a lot of things. Our musical creativiness, kind of, with me and the drummer and the other guys, we were kind of going in like separate directions. Um, and then yeah, we disbanded in like 2000. Um, and we also kept in touch though. We were still good friends. They were living in Orlando. I was in South Florida. Um, and it was a good time. And then, after, playing some more shows and doing other things with bands and music, each of us individually, about 5 years ago, the co-founder of Grin Cynic, good friend of mine, he had a stroke, and all he wanted really, was, he kept telling me, Mike, keep that band alive. We always did something special together. And I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but just keep it going, keep the music going. And I was like, okay, yeah. So here we are today, with a new lineup. Unfortunately, Mark, my singer, co-founder, he did pass away a couple of years ago. So I'm kind of, you know, uh, obeying his request to keep the band going and keep the name going and keep some of the songs alive that we had. And we restructured them a lot, so they're kind of more modernized, yet still have that Grin Cynic edge to them. And we're kicking butt right now. We're having a great time writing music, playing shows, and getting ready to do some really good things.
Right, right. What was it like kind of trying to find the right lineup these days?
Oh, great question. So that is like the hardest thing to find. So about 4 or 5 years ago, when Mark and I were talking, he told me to keep the songs alive. I wanted to re-record some songs. So I hooked up with this producer slash singer who didn't live too far from me. He was actually in a pretty big band um, here in South Florida, and they toured and did some European tours and everything else. He was actually looking for a guitar player in his band, and I was looking for a producer, engineer, co-writer. And we met, and we instantly just gelled together. It was like a great fit. But he wanted me in the band. I didn't really want to be in his band. I loved his music. I thought it was awesome, but I wanted to do my own thing. Um, and I wanted him in my band, and he was doing his own thing. So it was like, all right, why don't we just, write together, and you can produce, and we'll record it. So that's what we were doing. We wrote an album, we wrote a bunch of songs together, became really, really good friends. We started playing some shows. I recruited another guitar player, whose name is Sean, bass player, another Sean, and our drummer, Rafi. And I was playing guitar and singing, fronting the band, and I sang on the first release. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't. It was a lot of work for me. I love singing, but I'm a guitar player first, and I'm a songwriter first, and it just became. What am I? Yeah, it just became a lot of work on stage for me. Not that I don't mind doing the work. Um, I just really wanted a front man in the band, someone who was just grabbing the microphone and just, killing it to the crowd and knew how to, capture the audience and engage with them and everything else. And I knew who that singer was. It was James, who helped me produce and do everything else, who wanted me in his band, and he didn't want to be in my band yet because he still was doing his thing. So, fast forward a couple of years later, um, we always, hung out and kept in touch. He started to go through some personal stuff in his life, which was exactly almost the same stuff that I was going through in my life. And we started to talk about it and write about it. And I said, dude, man, you just need to be in my band. You need to front this band. You were meant to be in this band. We started this band together. Although, you're behind the scenes producing and engineering and writing with me, and I'm the one, doing that plus playing everything live and singing. This is ours. And he goes, timing's right now. So let's do it. I was like,
Right.
yeah, all right, rock and roll. So it's like, I need a commitment, man. He goes, let's do it. Let's do it. So here we are today. The new album that we just released, James and I wrote together. We also used a lot of my previous singer who passed away. When he passed away, his wife actually gifted me with a lot of his poems and notes and song lyrics that he just wrote on paper. So I was going through those with James, and we picked out some of those to really incorporate into the music to give the Grin Cynic songs some of that older stuff that Mark wrote, and kind of meshed it all together, and I think it came out
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh man. Yeah, the album, the self-titled album, it was released on the 17th of May. What steps did you guys take to kind of, keep a bit of originality from the old days in it, but modernize it for a newer audience?
Yeah, so we worked with some really good producers who helped us through that process. And then, I also contributed to, each individual band member and our unique different styles of playing. Um, Rafi is, he comes from a he's from Venezuela. He loves like Latin drum beats, and he plays, some really interesting percussion arrangements. And his background is really on the heavier rock to metal type of music. Um, and he's a young guy, so he's really up to date with the what's going on today in that world. Sean, the other guitar player, he comes from a total heavy metal type of background, and he's done a lot with metal bands throughout the years and toured Europe a lot with metal bands. And then our bass player Sean, he's more of like a um, how do you explain Sean? He's more of a pop rock, can play type of anything on bass, and brings a very unique style to the band, where he's not just playing root notes. He's doing a lot of walking. He's doing a lot of playing, in and out through, the melodies and the riffs. And then James and I, we're very melodic. My style and my sound of the guitar is very 70s Jimmy Page oriented, very blues oriented, very clean style playing, although we do tune very low. Um, my style of playing is definitely different from a lot of guitar players out there today. So, and James's vocal style is, more on the, Robert Plant end of things. Um, and you take all of that and you put it in a blender and you mix it all up, and you kind of get a really unique sound. You get this hard rock, heavy sound, but yet you can hear all the notes. The vocals have great melodies and great harmonies to them. So if you took like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and you mixed it with something like Alice in Chains and Metallica, that's kind of, the approach that we have. And it's just comes so natural to us because that's just what we enjoy playing, and put it all together. And you get this, unique sound.
I like it. I like it. During recording production, then, was there any challenges or even memorable moments that stick out to you?
Um, the recording process was pretty fun. We recorded it at a studio that I've been recording at for years, so very comfortable there. Um, a couple of things that stood out. We had to go back and re-record all the vocals because I recorded all the vocals initially, thinking that, hey, I'm gonna, still be fronting this band. And then when James said, I'll do it, we had to go back and re-record all the vocals for the entire album. And it was easy. So what, to answer your question, it was really interesting to watch him and listen to him do it, because he's the one who, wrote it with me. So, a lot of the harmonies and a lot of the lyrics, they were all his. So it came very natural to him. It wasn't, just, reading it off a piece of paper. It's like, you wrote this with me, man. So, it should come really natural. And he just knocked it out of the park. And, he's a great producer as well. And um, we we mixed it together, and we had a couple of other engineers and producers in there with us, and it was a really fun process. It was a fun process. We could have spent a couple more months tweaking things and doing things, and just like musicians do. Well, I got to turn that up just a little bit. Can you turn that down just a little bit? Hey, what if we add this here? What if we add this here? And then finally, like the producers, they're like, "All right, dude, it's great. Let's
Yeah.
stop." You have a great product. I could spend all your money here if you want, but we're gonna overproduce it. So we had to pick that time to be like, okay, we're good.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. I get you. I know when you write an album, it's special to you. But is there any specific tracks in particular that have a special meaning to you?
Um, Yeah. So Let Me Go, which is our single, um, has a special meaning, for both James and I, and Walk the Fire. Those two songs were written based on some, life events that him and I, just so happen to be going through at the same time, which, doesn't really happen too often. But the things that we were going through in life, about a year ago, year and a half ago, when we were writing all of this, um, it was interesting to learn about each other while we were writing. And some of the things that he was going through were exactly the same things that I was going through, and vice versa. So those two tracks are pretty special to us because they have some really deep meanings to them.
Right, right. I have this image of the two of you guys sitting down to write and it being like a group therapy session almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it could turn out to be one. It is definitely it's definitely an interesting process. It's fun. We love it. That's what we do. We write music.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. Now, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us, so I have to move on to some concert related questions if you don't mind. First
Sure.
off, first off, as a concert goer, what concerts do you think have made you?
So I saw my first real concert was Jimmy Page on his Outrider tour back in I think it was like 1990 or something. I wasn't even allowed to go. My parents wouldn't let me, so I had to sneak out of the house and had a friend of mine. I wasn't even driving. I didn't even have a driver's license at the time. And we went to see Jimmy Page and on his tour. And I believe Jason Bonham was playing drums for him at the time. And um, I think maybe Robert Plant made a guest appearance with John Paul Jones. Anyway, it was in Nassau Coliseum in New York, and I was just like, I was a kid too, so I was just like blown away with everything. And being a huge Led Zeppelin fan and never seeing, just seeing them on, TV and listening to them uh, on uh, on their CDs, to see it actually live and hear it, that sold me. I was like, that's what I need to be doing.
I get you. I get you. Then growing up, your local music scene, how do you think it influenced your future sound, or did it even?
We really didn't have much of a local scene where I grew up in New York. I grew up in um, about 30 miles north of Manhattan. And we had a couple of little clubs to play, and it was mainly, you know, growing up, when I was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, we were doing cover songs, right? And then we would throw in an original song that we thought was good, but it really would sucked. It didn't have, it was just what we wanted to play. It really had no structure to it, had no, melody to it. Um, and I just remember saying, I got to get out of here. This isn't working for me. There's nowhere to play, but we can go to Manhattan and play. But at the time, maybe one of us had a driver's license, and we weren't even old enough to get into the clubs in Manhattan. So yeah, that was interesting. So we played just like local high schools and stuff. But the high school gigs were fun, because in the high schools they have that big auditorium with a big stage, and it holds like 300 people, and typically they have a really good sound system. So I remember a couple of those gigs. Those were fun.
Right, right. I get you. Now, the moment we're all waiting for. For any listeners that haven't been lucky enough to catch one of your shows, what can they expect? Give us the full experience if you can.
Full experience. Well, what we do when we play shows is and every show that we play, and this is kind of, one of the things that kind of separates us a little bit from other bands is we put 100% into every show. If it's playing in front of, 50 people at a little club to, thousands of people at a festival, we're always, um, you know, have a very kind of structured show. We have a really cool intro that plays on a video screen and really gets people pumped up and shows like the history of Grin Cynic and back in the day and video clips. And then, has video clips of us backstage and hanging out, just showing like the personable side of all the band members. And then once that's over, and Rafi counts it in, and everything just explodes with energy. And we come out, with guns blazing, with one of our opening heavier songs, and gets the crowd going. We go from one song right into another song, and the energy is just it's funny because every time we play a show, where we're done, it's like we need to go to the gym and do more cardio, man. This is just we're like getting out of breath. So we pour 100% energy. When we get off stage, we're so full of sweat. We're done, and we poured it all out, and the crowd feels it. They feel our energy. They feel our music. The sound that we have and the tone that we use. You can feel it through your whole body. And that's kind of what makes us a little bit different. And along with just the energy, we played this show recently. We had our CD release party, and Don Jameson from That Metal Show was hosting it. And he came up to us after the show, and we were hanging out in the green room, and he was like, "Dude, I'm blown away." He goes, "You guys were playing this show like you were playing at Madison Square Garden.
Oh man.
Just the energy that you guys have, the energy." And we've always been told that our stage show and our the energy that we give out is very well received.
Yeah, yeah. How do you approach rehearsals then? Do you put the same amount of energy into a rehearsal as you would as a big festival gig?
Yeah, so rehearsing is we typically will run through our set with as much energy as we possibly can. We'll go through that once, and then then we'll dissect it a little bit. We'll all right, we need a little bit of work here. This harmony needs a little bit of rehearsal. So then we'll kind of break things down, and go over different parts that need some work. But I love rehearsals. We rehearse with the same equipment that we use on stage, which some people don't like because I use 3 stacks of 100-watt heads, and it gets very loud in our studio. Most of us are on in-ears, even at rehearsals. But we do have a really nice studio, and it's fairly large, but it does get very loud, and people like to come in and listen to us, and right at the doors, earplugs. It's like, here, you may want to put some of these in.
If you think of all the gigs you've played over your career, is there one that stands above the rest that maybe couldn't have got any better?
Yeah, so we played a festival not too long ago. It was about 2 or 3 years ago in Orlando, and I haven't played a festival since then in a long time. And it was in Orlando. We were playing with some really big names, and actually, no, yeah, it was 2 festivals that we played. We played at Summerfest, um, which was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we were on the same stage with Anthrax. We were opening for them,
Yeah.
and yeah, this was a cool show. So we this gig stood out because we were opening for Anthrax, like one of my you know favorite bands, growing up, and I still love them. And it was cool just to share the stage with them, watch them do sound check, see all the equipment that they used, hang out with them backstage, and just shoot the breeze with them. And then once we got out on stage, the crowd and the actual stage itself, and the sound and the all the room that we had, because we play everything from festivals to, little clubs where, you know, you hardly have some room to move on stage. And this festival stage was like huge. We get lost on it. It was great. Tons of room for everyone to run around and do their thing. And it was just a really cool show. The vibe was great. The energy from the crowd, the energy from everyone on stage and the band members, and it was very professionally done. The sound guy was great, monitor guys, our stage crew. It was just a really, really fun gig to play.
Yeah, sounds it. If every gig could be like that, it'd be heaven, wouldn't
Yeah, it
it?
definitely would.
If you flip that question around then and think of a gig that maybe everything went wrong, how did you guys overcome it?
Yeah, we just had that recently. It's funny you
Oh,
say that.
really?
Um, Yeah, we were playing this show, and I remember we were doing sound check, and there was three bands playing. There was a headliner and us, and then another band. And the headliner actually was Lita Ford,
Right.
and we were opening for her. And they set up their entire back line, and they set up everything. And then when we went to set up, uh, they didn't have enough microphones to like mic all the drums and all my guitar amps and everything else. So they had like to run the guitar center and get them. And then the guy who was doing sound was some dude that they found. I don't even know where and he didn't really know the board too well. Luckily James, our singer, he knows a lot about sound, and he's a really good sound guy. So we had to help the sound guy out. We had to get everything mic'd. And at the end of the day, our in-ears weren't working properly. Our mix was horrible. So it's like, you know what? We're professionals. We got to overcome this. This is, things happen. We're not going to be using our in-ears in this gig. And, we're going to have to rely on monitors, and it's going to be different. Um, and, like all of our drums weren't mic'd up properly, and some of them the mics when they were mic'd on the toms, they were falling off, and it was one of those shows. It was one of those
Yeah.
shows. But at the end of the day, it's funny because the crowd, they notice maybe 10% of the stuff, right? That
Yeah.
happens. They don't really notice a lot of it, and we noticed 90% of it or 100% of it. And there was like times where because our Rafty uses in ears, so he could hear everything, and his monitor mix sucked, and he couldn't really hear. There was times he couldn't hear, like when I was starting a song, and he came in late or he came in early, just because technical issues. Not that nothing musicianship wise, just all
Hmm.
technical stuff. But you improvise, and you push through it, and you never stop. You
Yeah.
don't never stop playing. You just keep going. And luckily, we're professional enough to know, okay, this part is not going well, so let's just hit some open chords here and let Rafty catch up, or whatever the case may be. And then we always get right back on it. And 9 out of 10 times, the crowd doesn't even know. And even like, our biggest fans and, some of our band members, friends and girlfriends and wives, who know the songs inside and out, they don't even really notice. So, yeah, that was an interesting show.
Yeah, it sounds it. It sounds it. I can't move on without mentioning back in the day, you guys played CGBGs in New York.
Yeah.
I've interviewed over 200 bands. I've never met anyone that has actually played there. You have to give us the details. Tell us what it was like.
Yeah. So, CBGB, that's, an iconic place in Manhattan. And we had the opportunity to play there right after we did the Howard Stern show. While we were on the show and Howard was playing our single um, on the air, um, Harvey Leeds, who was a former head of A&R for Epic Records, called into the show and said, "Hey, I really like that song. I'd like to see these guys play." And we're like, "Wow!" And we're all in like our early 20s. We're like, "Man, this is great, man!"
Yeah.
And Howard was going, "All right, well, where are you guys playing?" No, he said, no, Harvey goes, if you guys are ever playing in New York, let me know. I'd love to come and check out a show. And one of us said, "Yeah, well, we'll book a show in New York. We'll come up and play again." And so the Stern Show actually booked us at CBGB's, and they made it into this whole thing. They had a whole film crew there. They invited a lot of people. Um, we did interviews there, so it was really cool. And I played there prior to that. Just being in from New York, I played that club a couple of times with just you know other bands that I was in. But to play CBGBs in front of a packed crowd, with cameras, promoted by Howard Stern, and you have a lot of industry folks there, and just a lot of people who didn't know who the hell we were, and they just wanted to, who are these guys? I got to go check them out. I never heard of them before. Single sounds okay, but if Howard likes it and all his crew likes it, we got to check it out. So it was a really, really fun gig. We played about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. And then we did some interviews afterwards and took some pictures. And it was just a great time because, we're sitting there on stage and like, do you know how many iconic bands have played on this stage, from the early 70s up until now. And it was just cool to, have that feeling. And it's a small place, so it was fun. It's a good memory.
Yeah, yeah. Is it? I've seen it depicted in documentaries and movies and everything, and it always seemed like absolute mayhem. Was it like that in real life?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. And because it's a smaller venue, and folks go there, and it's just it used to be just a hard rock club, and with graffiti all over the place, and it was exactly how you saw when the Ramones and Blondie and all those bands used to play there back in the 70s, and Sex Pistols. It was a very punk oriented crowd back in the 70s. And yeah, the place got trashed and they never really fixed it up. And which was great because that's history.
Yeah.
You go into the bathroom at this place and there's no doors and it's graffiti all over the walls, people, writing stuff on the walls, spray painting on the walls, and this is all from when the club opened in probably the early 70s, maybe late 60s. And they just never cleaned it up. And they kept it that vintage and that nostalgic kind of look to it, for history. It was really cool. I was really sad when they closed it down. And they
Yeah.
had a good pizza place right next door too.
Right. Before we dive into the last couple of questions, then future plans, tours, anything you can tell us?
Yeah. So right now we're playing, one-off shows around Florida. We do have a small tour coming up in September with Gilby Clarke from Guns N' Roses. So we'll be supporting him throughout 4 or 5 Florida dates. And then, we're also still looking at some tours in the fall. And then first quarter of January of 2025, that's when we'll really, put the pedal to the metal and get on a bus and go out for a month and, hit the US. And then, our single's doing pretty well over in Europe as well. So we want to get over to your side of the pond and tear that up.
I'm looking forward to it. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right, we'll dive into the last couple. These are a couple of fun random ones, but I'm intrigued to see your answers. First off, what are you currently obsessed with? It can be anything at all.
What am I currently obsessed with? Um, I'm currently obsessed with working out, to be honest with you.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I've been, we've been playing a lot of shows and doing a lot of things, and I'm realizing as I get a little bit older, being on stage is, while it's fun and great, it's a really big workout. And back to your first couple of questions, we have a certain energy that we like to put out, and a certain vibe, and it takes a lot of work to do that. And we all need to stay in shape so we're able to give out that energy. So I've been hitting the gym a lot. I've been eating healthier and doing a lot of things to take care of myself so I can take care of others.
I like it. I like it. The next one, it's a bit of an odd one. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Well, that's kind of an easy one for me. That definitely would be Jimmy Page.
I was expecting it.
And yeah, that would be Jimmy Page. And that would be, and then I can call it a day after that. Then I can die and everything would be complete.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Be a cool 24 hours.
it would be an amazing 24 hours. In fact, it's funny, I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and sort of the same question was asked, and they asked me about two. They said, pick two people that you can meet and spend some time with. Who would it be? And I picked John Lennon, and they said alive or dead. John Lennon and Jimmy Page. So imagine being in a room with John Lennon and Jimmy Page and just hanging out, playing guitar, writing music. Oh, that'd
Yeah, yeah,
be
oh
pretty
man.
cool.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The final one. What's your go-to album? What's an album you always revisit?
Um, I always go back to I really like Abbey Road from the Beatles. That's a great album. It's one of my go-to albums. Um, and I really love uh, the song remains the same soundtrack from the movie, from the Led Zeppelin concert, just because it's so different. They play a lot differently than they do on the album, and just go off on different things. And song remains the same, and no quarter, and dazed and confused, and they're playing for these songs for 30, 40, 50 minutes with all these really interesting uh, arrangements, and they're improvising and they're just doing their thing. So those are a couple of my go-tos.
Brilliant, brilliant. Great picks there. Listen, Mike, it's been an absolute blast now. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I hope to see you at a show.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us into music stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.